welcome back to another episode of Thrill of It All. In this episode, I talk with Oliver Percovich about how he went from working in a bakery in Australia to founding Skateistan, a groundbreaking NGO with skate schools and educational centers in Afghanistan, South Africa, and Cambodia. I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's pretty exciting to be here.
Happy to have you on. You came over for a Skateistan board meeting, right?
Yeah, specifically for the Tony Hawk Foundation board meeting and then also the Skateistan International Advisory Board meeting, which went really well.
It did. I'm on the international board. I'm very thankful you invited me to be on the international board for Skateistan.
Rad to have you.
We have a long history now of working together. A mutual friend in Barnaby in Australia connected us, and we started giving boards to you for your mission around
10 years ago.
10 years, yeah. So I think let's just kind of start at the beginning of Skateistan. You obviously grew up skateboarding. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Australia and Papua New Guinea.
Okay. All of this started, right, on a trip to Afghanistan. So where were you in life? And let's talk a little bit about before you took that trip to Afghanistan. What were you doing in life before that?
I had a little bread business in Melbourne, and then I left that. I sold that to somebody, and I moved to.
How did you get into the bread business?
I was actually working at a bakery and baking bread, and I heard that the bakery in my town where I come from, St Andrews, I heard that the bakery closed down, and because I was like baking the bread, I thought, why don't I just buy this bread and bring it to the market, because the bakery's closed down, everybody's going to be coming to the market to buy bread, and there's no bread there. So I brought bread to the market, and then that grew.
Wow.
I started selling. So then I sold that business, and at the same time I was working as a researcher at a university, and I had an opportunity to go to Central Australia from Melbourne, so I sold the bread business, left the university job, and I moved to Central Australia, and I started to work with Indigenous people there as a health worker, working together with people that had been charged with murder but had disabilities.
So these were mental disabilities?
Yeah, there was two people. One was a schizophrenic, and really, really gnarly stories. The other one was deaf and dumb, and they'd both were murderers, but I sort of looked after them. I was with my girlfriend at the time, Shana, and she got a scholarship for Central European University in Budapest, and I thought, let's go to Hungary. So that sort of started this travel from Australia, and ultimately I ended up in Afghanistan. So I lived in Hungary for a bit, I lived in Morocco for a little while,
Wow.
I was in Spain, I was in Germany, I was in Poland, and then
Gnarly. Those are big travels.
Eventually, Shana got this job in Kabul in Afghanistan, and I really encouraged her to apply for that job because I really wanted to go to Afghanistan.
Gnarly. Not that many people want to go to Afghanistan. You're one of the few that are excited about it. I mean, everyone I've talked to, I visited Skateistan in 2014, and I just remembered when we talked about it, everyone was like, "You're crazy. Why would you go there?"
Yeah, for me, something that stuck with me was I remember reading in a magazine, I think it was Time magazine, and it was around the time of the Taliban, and they'd banned people playing soccer, they'd banned people flying kites, and
all the good stuff.
It just didn't make sense to me. They'd banned music. I was like, what sort of society is this? And it just really intrigued me.
Really?
So it sort of just stuck in my head, and that was sort of 10 years later. It was like, wow, Afghanistan, Khyber Pass, all of these sort of very exotic.
That's a very curious mind you have to be,
But I'd travelled to over 40 countries by that stage.
Oh, wow.
So I'd done quite
well
a lot
seasoned.
I really enjoyed travelling, and I think I've got an intrepid nature.
Yeah. Okay, so this is 2007. You go with your girlfriend at the time.
No, she moved first to Afghanistan in November 2006, and then I followed her a couple of months later because I really didn't have much money at all, and I was living on a friend's couch in Germany and actually collecting bottles off the street and cash, like empty, like you get 15 cents back for a bottle, and I was collecting bottles, basically fighting with bums on the street for the bottles that were there.
Gnarly.
And I could make, like, I don't know, and then I did English lessons and I did some translation stuff. So I was just scraping
like
by,
hustling.
trying to just get a little bit of...
and that was for your trip to Afghanistan?
Before I went to Afghanistan, I wanted to go with something.
Yeah.
So I think I saved up like $1,000 or $2,000, and then I went.
And
that was February 2007. So it's winter time. I was shit scared to go to Afghanistan.
So you were intrigued and you were excited, but you were also really scared.
Yeah. As soon as it dawned that the trip was actually coming, I was almost saying to myself, right, I'm ready to die. Like,
wow.
Well, it was.
I know what you mean.
It was.
Yeah, it was a gnarly time.
I had to somehow prepare myself, and I made it all the way to Dubai on a €100 ticket, and then I needed to then arrange the flight from Dubai to Kabul, and that was another $250. And then when I was just on that flight, I remember just really sweating it quite a bit.
And had you talked to your girlfriend and her given you some reassurance, or were you just kind of going in blind, like, I hope this works out?
Well, the first night that she arrived in Kabul, she had a rocket land right next to her bedroom and not explode. Like, people from outside of Kabul were firing rockets into the city, and somehow it like entered into her compound. So that was the first day that she arrived in November 2006.
Cow.
So,
and she didn't just get on the first plane out of there?
No, she stuck around.
Wow.
And had this job as a researcher, and my dream was to also get a job as a researcher in Kabul. And I tried to do as much preparation as possible, and
like reading up and understanding.
I read a lot. Did
you grow a beard?
No, I'm not very good at growing a beard. I don't think it's just pretty scraggly.
But is that something that, I mean, that's kind of what I thought. Like, when I was like, oh, I'm going to Afghanistan, I want to grow a beard, and like,
I wish I could grow a beard.
And
if
so
I could grow a beard, I would have.
It's like blend in a little bit, so I'm not so white and vanilla looking, you know, like clean cut. I didn't want to stand out that much, but okay. So you're shit scared. You're on the airplane. You're on your way there. What's next?
When I arrive, it's just way dirtier than I'd ever imagined. I just imagined it working a little bit more, and I arrived and the taxi picked me up, and they're just going in these streets and going through really, really deep water, and I'm wondering if I'm going to slide off the road, and this is in the city.
Yeah.
And it was just so bleak. February, but I was very excited. I wanted to explore straight away. I wanted to just straight away walk outside and go to the market and see what was going on. And I tried to talk with the taxi drivers, and I remember something came on the radio about, I just heard Australian or something, and I was trying to work out, do I actually say that I'm Australian or not? Like, I don't know if Australians are doing bad stuff in Afghanistan. Like, how
you're navigating this like without.
And I think I worked out that the Germans were quite well liked, or at least more well liked than Australians. So I think at the start I pretended to be German.
That's amazing. Okay, so
that was you
connect with your girlfriend.
I tried to get a job. I started to work for this guy that he had a guest house there. We were living in that guest house, and he was just like kind of a creepy guy, and he was like making really inappropriate comments about my girlfriend and about other girls, and I sort of stuck in that job for about a week, and I was like, no, I can't handle this.
That's no good.
I don't want to do that. And then we moved guest houses, and
explain what a guest house is.
A guest house is simply a compound that has been prepared for foreigners to live in it. So the Afghan style housing might not actually have running water, or they might not have Western style toilets. The Asian style toilets are just sort of a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
So guest houses are then, it was.
Do they have a guard as well, or security of some sort?
The guest house that we moved into had 15 people that were staying in the guest house, and they were mostly working for UN or other NGOs, and we had 15 staff there, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, one person staff per
So they had
guest.
Cleaners, they had guards, they had this guy that was mowing the lawn, and it took him he used scissors to cut the lawn, and it took him like a whole week to like cut the lawn. I was like, I could do that in half an hour. Like, there's all of these efficiencies that I could build into the system.
You saw that they could get by with 3 people instead of 15. Yeah.
So I was living there with all of these people that had like these really high paying jobs, and I was just looking ways to cut costs at every corner, and it was weird. And then I happened to get I really needed to earn money somehow, and somebody offered me a job working as a bartender for one night on the International Army base, which was really just like half a mile away. And it was for a company called Danish Camp Supply. So I did that. I did that for one night, and they were really happy with how it went. So they offered me a job for 800 euros a month, and I did that for a month, and I turned their turnover from $200 a day to $2,000 a day in that month.
Was it?
And then I went back to them and said, hey, you got to pay me 3,000 euros a month now if you want me to continue in the job. Was
it communication, or what? How were you able to transform their turnover or their sales to that point at the bar?
The big difference was that there were a whole lot of people that were running rackets, like Afghans that were ripping off the base, and because everybody else on there didn't actually go outside the base at all. They had no idea about what the local prices were or anything. And I just went out onto the streets and sourced my own stuff. They were selling like pallets and pallets of milk at like double what the retail, like wholesale, at almost double the retail price on the street. So I just went out in the streets and bought it retail, and then retailed it on the
gnarly.
So I cut a whole lot of people out of their little rackets.
Were you scared that they were?
And ultimately that job didn't last long because I just made too many enemies. While this is happening, I brought my skateboard to Afghanistan, and because I was working a lot of the time, I had some Afghan friends through another Australian friend, Travis, and they were like at our guest house, would skate inside the guest house a little bit, and they were pretty fascinated by the skateboard. So I said, hey, take my board and like go skate the streets and see what you can do with it. And then when I had some time off from the base, I'd go and join the sessions with them. And they were just super excited. They were sort of like middle class Afghan males, about 21, 22, 23. And they just thought skateboarding was so cool, and
which it is.
Totally. So I thought that was pretty incredible. And Travis was a photographer, so he was taking photos of them, and I think he sold a photo to Vice, and they got picked up. And then we had like some other kids that would see what was going on, and I thought, well, why don't we get the kids involved as well? Like these kids that are begging on the street, they can sort of take part in the sessions. And then Travis took some photos of them as well. And this started to then spark some ideas, because girls didn't usually play any sports. I didn't see any girls riding bicycles or flying kites. Or
they couldn't, right?
Not
really.
It was really not culturally it wasn't appropriate for it. So,
but because skateboarding didn't exist there, it wasn't something that was frowned upon because no one even really knew about it.
Yeah, it was something brand new. We were just doing it in this high school. Then I lost the job on the base, thankfully. So we went out skateboarding every day. We'd go and skate in the park, in the Central Park. We'd go and skate at the high school
And do kids just gravitate to you?
Yeah, they thought that it was incredible, and I was really, really comfortable. I bought my first motorcycle in Kabul, so I was getting around by motorbike. I knew how to ride a motorcycle, but I'd never owned one before. So that was all happening, and I was just really excited about. I was just invigorated by it all, like skateboarding and riding a motorbike around and something brand new in Afghanistan.
It's like a whole new level of exploration.
The girls were doing it. That was just so exciting to me.
And so when these young girls started doing it, like in the park or whatever, their parents didn't trip out on it and no one tripped out on it, or they weren't really sure what to think?
They were the street working kids. So the kids,
so the parents weren't there.
The parents weren't there. They send the kids out to work on the street because they can bring in much more than they can. And the problem is, in a lot of these cases, the parents might be drug addicts and not able to really get jobs or hold down jobs, and the kids are the way that they can then do what they do. So the kids are then a little bit wild, and they're ready to interact and do whatever.
They're probably not afraid to much either. They've been on the streets for years, working.
Exactly. So that was, they needed that mindset for girls to actually try it. These were girls that were rough and ready. They might have been on the streets working when they were 6 years old, 7 years old, and they're being harassed by other people, and they know how to fight back.
So riding a skateboard and not having parents around to tell them not to, and then in some cases their parents probably weren't even in the position to tell them not to. So it was just...
Or they just didn't know that they were
doing it. I know,
so
the local, I don't want to say wise men, but the local, seniors, they didn't trip out on it. No one was really bugging out on it too much.
I think those street kids get so much abuse as it is. They're shouted at all the time. It's sort of like when you grow up as a skateboarder, people say, "Hey, you can't go skate there," and you think, "Well, I'm actually not doing any. I'm having fun. I'm doing what I'm doing." And you sort of make up your own mind about whether it's right or wrong to do, and whatever somebody's saying, you ignore. And these kids were just really in the same.
Right.
They didn't care what people thought. We were doing these street sessions. I then left Afghanistan in September, so I'd been there for 6 months around, and I went on a holiday to India. And in India, I had a motorcycle accident, and it was a pretty bad motorcycle accident. I went back to Australia for surgery.
What did you hurt?
I completely smashed my shoulder. So a cow walked onto the road, and I was going around.
You can't hit the cow.
Yeah, you can't hit the cow. And I think I looked down for a second. I looked up, and then the cow was there, and I just went to. You said
holy cow. Just kidding.
I actually blanked out just before I crashed. I don't know how. I don't actually remember. Maybe I slid down the road. It was pretty bad. I'd actually had a couple of dogs just go before me along, because I rode all the way from Delhi to Calcutta in 3 days by myself, and it was just going.
It's almost not if, it's when something's going to happen in India.
I think I was pushing it too much.
Yeah, that sounds like it. 3 days by yourself.
It's something that I often do.
Yeah, until you hit the wall, or hit the cow, or hit the road. So you're back in Australia.
Back in Australia. And then just this skateboarding stuff is staying with me, and I thought, well, let's try to get some boards. Somehow I got in touch with Barnaby.
Yeah, and then Barnaby reached out to us and said,
I think he was actually even in the States.
He might have been.
Very close in that thing. Yeah. So I met up with him, I talked to him, and within 2 weeks he said, "Hey, Jamie's back this."
But I just remembered thinking that is such a bold move. Anything we can do to help that guy's and I remember thinking I don't want to go to Afghanistan at the time. I was just that is gnarly. Because at the time, Afghanistan was getting a lot of bad press, the Taliban, and everything was all over the news. And obviously, it's the news, but portions of it have to be true in order for any news to be discussed. There's bad stuff happening there. And I was just this guy wants to go there and bring skateboarding there. Isn't there a bunch of other safer places to bring it? But I appreciated it. And, really Chad, my good friend Chad that helped run Zero, him and Barnaby were better friends than even I was with Barnaby. And he brought it to me and he was like, dude, we got to do this, you know? And I was like, agreed. So yeah, of course.
And then that was like, whoa, you know, Jamie friggin' Thomas is like backing this. For me, it was like, right, okay, that just gave me such a motivation to like, all right, I really have to make this work. I can't, like, if somebody's backing this completely zany idea, I can't let somebody that's
you felt a little more
down.
accountable to it,
Yeah.
to the idea, to your own idea.
Then I had to go back to Afghanistan and do
What was the idea, Oliver? Like, I'm just going to bring boards to Afghanistan. Was that as simple as the idea was, or was it more than that?
No, it was. The kids had asked for skateboards. They were totally fascinated by it. I saw children engaging with it. There were the most school-aged children in the world in Afghanistan at the time. Half the population's under the age of 15. It was like, this totally makes sense. Nobody's engaging with young people, and they're engaging with me through the skateboard.
Yeah.
I've got to take action. I've got to.
And what was the action? Just like
the action was just simply engaging with them. It was like a cross-cultural thing where I could share something that I was passionate about. I could share something that I loved, and I was passionate about skateboarding, and they were also passionate about skateboarding. I saw the same things. I saw myself in the kids. Like, that was me when I was 6 years old and first saw a skateboard and just couldn't let it go.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to serve those kids somehow, and I didn't really have any sort of bigger ideas. We had sort of proposals, but they were very, very vague. And the idea was sharing skateboarding would be a positive thing for the youth, and the youth are the future of the country, and they've got to have links to the rest of the world. Skateboarding gave me so many links to traveling, to culture, to music, to all sorts of different things. And I ran a fundraiser at a friend's bar in Melbourne. We raised about $2,000. We went across with some skateboards that I could carry on the plane, but we couldn't bring all of them. And they'd found the fountain. Some friends of friends had like seen this thing, and they said, hey, you could probably skate there, you should check it out. So I didn't actually uncover it myself. That was somebody that knew somebody else. And then I started to do these little sessions at the fountain and just try to build it out.
That consists of you showing up with all the boards, and then the kids just kind of, was it like planned, or did you just show up randomly and all the kids just come out of the woodworks and ride the boards?
It was firstly, really just, hey, let's skate the fountain, and we're pretty sure that exactly the same that would happen as when we did it in the park or at the school.
Kids will flock to
it was a magnet.
Yeah.
It was a magnet for the kids, and within 30 seconds they're hooked. As soon as they see this amazing rolling thing, it's like, hey, I want to do that as well. And I really wanted to focus on the opportunities for the girls, and I really wanted to focus on the opportunities of how it could connect the children together, because Afghan society is divided by ethnicity, and those ethnicities hate each other.
Five different, right?
There's like 5 major ones, but there's around 11 or 12.
And those ethnicities don't really cross. They don't really have much interaction with each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I realized that at the skateboarding sessions, whenever we would set that up, it was pretty clear that these kids came from different ethnicities, because they actually look
different.
They look different, yeah. And the other thing that I noticed was that the kids came from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Some were rich and some were dirt poor. And it was this chance of creating a nexus, creating a hub or a way of connecting them all. And that excited me. That was to me what would actually bring peace to Afghanistan. When we had these little sessions going, I saw a microcosm of what I actually wished for the whole country. Was these people from different ethnicities, from different classes coming together. And that's what I always experienced at any skate park, that ever went to. It doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter what age you are. You can go there and you can hang out and you can skate together.
Yeah, and the passion for skateboarding brings everyone together.
So I just saw that as
that is amazing.
I saw it as an opportunity. I saw it as a powerful tool. And the fact that girls were doing it, I was like, all right, I have to do something here to amplify this. So what I did is that I gave the girls 2 or 3 times as much time on the skateboards, because I had the only skateboards. I completely controlled it. And because I gave the girls more time on the skateboard, they got better than the boys. It was like really, really simple. And then I'd run competitions of the girls against the boys, and the girls would beat the boys really easily because they'd been practicing more.
Yeah.
And that then blew people away, because then there was people coming around and looking, and then they saw the girls like better than the boys, and they're like, oh, that's that sport for girls, like that's that girl sport. And they couldn't really explain it, because boys were always better than the girls at these other things, because they'd been given the opportunity to.
Yeah, and they'd been doing it way more. Yeah.
There was the girls from the Pashtun families especially, they'd have more resistance. Like older brothers sometimes beat up the younger sister that was skateboarding because she'd been doing it, skating or mixing with other people. We needed to win over the parents. So what we did was we took photos of the kids with Polaroids and then gave the kids the photos, and they'd bring it home and pop it on the fridge, and
it would be the introductory.
Yeah, and then the parents saw how happy it made the kids to skate, that they then was like, which parent doesn't want to see their child happy?
Yeah, that is so true. Wow, that is so cool. I mean, so that was your idea to introduce skateboarding into their home, was send them home with a Polaroid of seeing the kids happy. That way the parents get to see this thing that they're maybe doing in the park or the fountain or whatever, that they're just maybe thankful that their kid's happy.
And I had no grand plan. I was just stoked to skate and make these kids happy for, an hour of,
At this point, it seems like you're thriving on the what this is doing for your heart, it's touching. It sounds very touching. Like even when you were telling the story earlier, I'm touched. And I've heard the story before, but obviously when you tell a story, there's different nuances that, I've never heard. And I can only imagine me hearing it is one thing, but experiencing it firsthand and seeing the joy on these kids' faces.
Yeah, I think everybody's looking for meaning in their life, and especially meaning in work is especially important. You spend so much time doing it. And I think I'd been really struggling to find something, what I really wanted to do, that I was really passionate about. And I was 33 at the time and broke and far from home, and just still I knew that I had the ability to do stuff, but I just kept on leaving things and going on to something else, because I just hadn't quite found a perfect match. I found it there in Kabul. I found it there in the dust and the dirt and the kids sessions just being there. That was me being totally alive, feeling.
Wow, that's rad.
Feeling human. I was really looking for something, and I'm really glad that I kept on. I didn't just settle for something that could have been enough or okay or what other people wanted me to do, but I found something that I connected with.
I can relate to that. I mean, my story is not as dangerous as that, but I remembered, leaving home in Alabama and moving to California, and it was tough, but then once you get that first taste of, and the feeling of doing what it is that you feel best doing, the best you've ever felt in your life, you're like, I just want to do more of this and less of everything else. Okay, so where does it go from here? You're in the fountain, you're stoked, you found your calling. Do you go back and write a plan, or is it still just evolving? I was in Kabul, and I just felt like I needed to keep on going with this. I needed to see where it could actually go to, because the sessions went from 5 kids to 15 kids to 30 kids to 80 kids. Wow.
And we had 8 skateboards.
Over how long of a period?
6 months or so.
Wow.
So it was sort of getting into.
And you're still living on your savings at this point.
Summer again. I rented out a guest house, and then I was paying $700 a month, and I rented out rooms to other foreigners.
Oh wow!
So then I didn't have to pay rent myself, but I had virtually no money to live on, and but I was doing something that
it was worth it.
I was in my element, and seeing the children connect. And there was a specific moment and where the girls, after a skateboard session, they were just so happy. It was like a summer afternoon. They'd been skateboarding for an hour and a half or something, and they all just held hands and started to dance around the fountain. And I'm like, wow, this doesn't usually happen after people skateboard,
Yeah.
It was.
And these are all different ethnicities holding hands too.
They're all different. I was like, what is happening here? This is something really special. And I wanted to.
Did you get any photos of this?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not that clever. I was just
living
in the moment.
In the moment. That's better.
And I think that was the point when I was like, okay, that was a eureka moment. That was like, I've got to dedicate myself to doing this and taking this as far as I possibly can, because this is something that is super powerful.
Did it.
From that, I was like, okay, I really need to engage the girls, and I worked out that the girls needed role models. Without role models, it wasn't gonna work. And one of the best skateboarders, Cisilino, she was at school as a 10-year-old, as an 11-year-old, and then her parents pulled her out of school because she was already begging on the street, but they wanted her to beg full time. And she was like doing really well in her class. And she was like she was the best female skateboarder. So I offered her $1 a session because I was like living on $20 a week myself. And I offered her
$20 a week?
Yeah.
What were you eating, rice?
A lot of potatoes, carrots and onions. And I'd actually go.
Those were the cheapest vegetables?
Yeah, they were the cheapest vegetables. I like to cook, so it was like a challenge. And rice and pasta.
Did you ever go back to the bottle business, collecting the bottles? Or it was too time consuming?
But I did go to the market at closing time, and I worked out that I could bargain them down.
Oh yeah. Being the last
closing time.
Being the last shopper of the day.
Buying the moldy potatoes because they were cheaper, and then cutting out the moldy bits, and you can survive pretty well on $20 a week. It works.
Wow.
So
that is admirable in itself. That's a separate podcast.
We did the deal with the parents. She'd get $1 a session. She'd be this role model for the other girls, because I realized that she would attract the other girls, and that was the way. I couldn't just keep on teaching these girls. And in Afghan society, boys and girls need to be separated from the time they hit puberty. And so I couldn't actually do anything I couldn't help a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old girl to skateboard. I couldn't hold her hands or do anything in public. I had to be away. So I needed female skateboard instructor. She was the best. I wanted her to go to school because she was smart and her parents had taken her out of school. And then the parents agreed for her to go back to school if she had this income as a skateboard instructor.
Wow.
So
therefore, the school is born around her. Basically.
That was the start of connecting skateboarding and education. So before that point, it was just like, hey, let's skate because it's something that's cool. It's bringing people together.
Yep.
It's something with the kids, and the children were telling me, we want to go to school. We want a better quality school system. And so school in Afghanistan goes for 2 hours a day at most. Lots of times the teachers don't actually turn up. And so that's made me think, like, why don't we try to build a school ourselves? Why don't we try to give them...
That's a really big jump from, like, this girl needs to be taught, and so she can continue to be the lead skate instructor for the girls, but to like building a school. It just seemed like the natural progression.
It was...
Or it was just mainly because you just saw the need in society.
It was what the children were asking for.
Okay.
At the start, the children were asking for skateboards,
Yep.
and I provided the skateboards. That's why I went to Barnaby and
Yep.
asked him for the skateboards, because
Yeah.
the kids had asked me, "Hey, can you give me a skateboard?" And then the kids asked to go to school, and they wanted to have
Yes.
better quality schooling. So then again, I saw myself as a servant to the children.
Yeah.
And it was such an important process, because everything else that was happening with foreigners in Afghanistan was coming from a top down.
Yeah.
It was like what somebody from the outside wanted to impose on Afghans.
Yeah.
And sure, they'd do it for 6 months or a year or however long the money was there. And as soon as the money wasn't there, the project fell apart.
Yeah.
And I realized that it needed to grow up organically from the roots, and it had to be something that Afghans wanted. If Afghans wanted it, it would work over a longer period.
Yeah.
And so that was the simple idea behind providing the skateboards, providing then education, because that's what the kids were asking for.
That is amazing. To your knowledge, had there been anything in Afghanistan that had worked like this? Like, meaning, like, was there anyone who was actually penetrating and making, creating some type of system to interact with children and making something happen?
I was hugely influenced by there was a children's circus in Kabul, and we went skateboarding there actually in 2007, I think. And I was just amazed at this space. So it was a Danish couple that started it, and they ran this children's circus, and they were teaching unicycling and juggling and all of these. They did all of these activities with the kids, and I just thought that it was so cool and so amazing, and I was totally inspired by that. That was like, wow, like this is... this is just a wonder world in this really, really horrible space in a way, and that was a huge inspiration to me. So the next challenge was to try to find land and try to find money to back it, and I tried to work through I just did lots and lots of meetings with anybody and everybody that I could find, and I was laughed at by a lot of people when it was like, hey, this is the idea that I have. And I mean, especially foreigners just thought it was completely nuts, and it's the last thing that Afghanistan needs. And Afghans themselves were like seeing, did I have money, and if I had money, then that would be something that they could get behind, because I'd be like bribing them almost to do something. And when they worked out that I didn't have any money, they were like, all right, well, that's not gonna really work. We don't want to back the idea. So not having any money kept on, I kept on opening doors, and they kept on closing. So it was firstly through the Kabul City Council, and then I found somebody that was part of like the Parks and Gardens thing, and he wanted to give me a space, but only if I built him a hothouse or something. And there was all, it was working, and then it was not working, and I just kept on trying all these different angles. And finally, I had some Afghan friends that I rode motorcycles with and played soccer with, and hung out on the weekends or different points. And one of them knew the brand new appointed president of the Olympic Committee. And they'd gone to high school together, so he organised a meeting together with the Olympic Committee president, and I did this meeting, and he was stoked on the idea. But I think he was like the whole reason that he was stoked on the idea was that his son, I think, had a pair of rollerblades, and so he had just imagined this. We'll build this skate park, and he imagined it was like for rollerblades. He didn't actually understand what a skateboard was. So it was like this miscommunication thing and it was just very fortuitous that his son had this pair of rollerblades that he'd probably never used anywhere, and his son was like 8 years old. So he got behind the idea, and he said, well, he asked me how much land I wanted, and I said I need like 800 square. I want to build 800 square meters, I think, and I had a budget of $20,000. And he then said, "Well, can you build it like double the size or triple the size? I'll give you the land." And so I thought, all right, that's a challenge. I'll take it on. Let's make this plan bigger. And I kept on going around to building companies, and they were just giving me these ridiculous quotes just to even just put down a concrete slab. And
you think it was because you're a foreigner, or just because they were trying to?
Well, that was just there was just not very many people that can do that sort of construction. So you kind of stuck. They give you whatever price they give you, that's it, because there's 2 people in the whole city that can actually do something at a certain quality. And, so then I was just very lucky to happen across a guy from an Afghan construction company. It was like an Afghan Dubai, ACCL, and it was a young Afghan that was the president, and he got behind the idea, and he thought, I'll build you this thing, and I'll build you this thing for like a really, really cut rate. And so then the challenge for me was then to find the money to build it. And to build that, it would normally cost about $800,000, and the building company had offered it to me for $170,000. So it was like way under. It would. I think the cost of construction to the building company was like $300,000, and they were going to put in $130,000. Yeah, they were going to donate $130,000.
At all costs, you had to find a way to get it.
I had to find, and so I was just knocking on doors. The Canadian embassy was the very first ones to get behind the idea, I think, and they offered $15,000. Then the Norwegian embassy doubled that, and we had then 36,000, and then the Danes. So all of these different embassies sort of
all those
competing.
embassies were in Afghanistan.
They were all in Kabul, and so once somebody broke the ice and got back the idea, there were like other grants. People like, all right,
they were like endorsements. The more endorsements you got, the easier it was to get more. Wow.
Exactly, and I pieced together the 170,000 that we needed. Andreas Schutzenberger, who's building all the World Cup courses, in all the Munster courses, and a lot of building skate parks in Wood. He offered to volunteer and come. We just had to pay for his, the cost of the wood.
Wow.
And so he came over.
Things are coming together.
Things were...
How did it feel to see all of this happening? Was it just like every little bit of endorsement and every opportunity and every break you were just celebrating, or were you just still kind of head down, I got to make this happen and it's not done yet?
It was very much head down, because I knew how big it was and how many dead ends I'd come into.
Yeah.
Like, I'd get excited and then it would disappear again. And so until it was actually opened and had happened, it wasn't. I mean, it was exciting, but it just wasn't. It wasn't real yet. And when Schutzy came over to build the ramps, he insisted that we build them together with the children. So the children that were skating in Macrayan all came.
Macrayan's the name of the fountain.
The fountain.
Yeah.
They all came and actually built the ramps together.
That is brilliant too.
Together with us. So it was like they saw this park materializing like over the course of
so their passion and love for it was growing.
And they'd never seen anything like it. All they'd skated was this concrete fountain that was all rough and really dirty, and we had to sweep it out each time, and all of a sudden they had this sparkling enormous skate park with all of these different elements and smooth quarter pipes, and it was and they felt ownership because they'd built it together. And that was definitely one of the, I think that's going to be the highlight of my life forever. Like the opening ceremony and the children cutting the ribbon, and them all just like going into the park, and it was really incredible. We had a huge suicide attack the day before, and everybody was saying like call off the opening. It's way too dangerous. Nobody's going to be able to turn up for it. And I was like, no way. It's like, we've made it this far. We've committed
We're not
to
going to be
this.
deterred.
We're gonna go ahead with this. And everybody turned up anyway. And it was something that was very, very unforgettable.
That is amazing. How did the following weeks after the school go? Like, did you guys put together a educational plan, or did you hire teachers? Like, how did you go about hiring the staff and rolling the whole education and skateboarding out?
We had a basic plan, and the basic plan involved foreigners being the volunteer teachers, and then having a translator, and then the Afghan staff or volunteers learning and then teaching. So we even started just with English, with different things that we thought would be helpful skills. We wanted to build art into it. So we had these classes being run by the foreigners, and it didn't really make sense. It was like, why are we doing it? Why can't the Afghans actually run the school and run the classes? And we try to move to a different model. And that was then also all in the name of becoming more sustainable. How can this work in the long run? You know, a foreign volunteer can really love the job and come there and be really passionate and try really hard, but the reality is they can probably only be a volunteer for 6 months or maybe a year at the very most. But 6 months is already pushing it, because it was pretty hard circumstances to live in, and with no money as well. And so I really try to build up the Afghan staff. And we had the programs that we were running was Skate and Create, or what we now call Skate and Create, which was 1 hour of skateboarding and 1 hour in the classroom. And so the skateboarding was the hook.
Yeah.
And the kids were coming for skateboarding. We had 350 places at the school, and we reserved 175 of them for girls. So we quickly reached the boys' quota of 175, and then we had this waiting list of like a couple of hundred boys that wanted to actually come to the school, but we didn't. We didn't.
Yeah, you really wanted it to be equal.
We wanted
boys and
to.
girls.
Yeah, we really wanted to have those equal numbers, and I think we got to like 140 girls or 150 girls. And then the Afghan staff was telling us, well, there's all of these street working kids that have never actually gone to school. And when you're trying to teach them things, the children that already go to school, they've got such a big advantage over these other kids. Let's do some sort of like accelerated learning program.
To get them up to speed.
To get them up to speed. And so that's how Back to School was born. So all of these initiatives, everything that we were doing, had come from the Afghans the whole time. First it was the Afghan kids asking for the skateboard, then it was we want education, and then it was like, we want to go back to regular school. Like these street working kids, they need to have the ability to do that. And then we built in a third program, which was youth leadership, and that we just saw how the children themselves were sometimes the best teachers for the other students. There's such an ability for a 12-year-old is going to learn so much more from another 12-year-old or another 13-year-old than some 25-year-old. The youth leadership program allowed children that showed special ability to be skate instructors, or to be art instructors, or to be photography instructors, or to do movie making, or whatever they were passionate about. They could then start these little classes themselves. We gave them extra opportunities they talked in Afghan parliament. We organised overseas trips for these kids, and so we built out this youth leadership program. So then that was the core 3 programs that we had at Skateistan in Kabul.
That's amazing. I remembered hearing when I was there that part of the programs where you're taking kids to other countries, there's the fear that they could run, right? And that they could not, because they don't want to return back to Afghanistan because things are so tough. Did that ever happen to you guys?
In the early days, not at all. We had for a lot of I know the Olympic Committee was sending athletes overseas, and a lot of times the whole team would run away.
Really?
And a lot of other organisations had problems like that, and we had 100% return rate up until I think 2015. Like, it's been fairly recently that we had the first person skip, and it wasn't something that we organised. It was something that somebody else organised for a Skateistan.
So they might not have felt as accountable.
Well, yeah,
to you guys.
I mean, it came back onto us. But
yeah. And that's frowned upon, of course.
It's just I mean, the whole idea is to. Yeah, that's not the idea of doing the trip to get that person overseas. It's more of to build out their learning and their capacity.
So how long after you started the Kabul Skateistan, or the school, did you then move to the north and start Mazar Sharif?
The second project that we started was actually in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh.
So you went from
Kabul. We were getting contacted every week by people all over the world saying, "Well, we love what you're doing in Kabul. Like, come to our country and open up a Skateistan." And I was like, "Well, we don't really have money or the expertise to do it there, or we can't, or they didn't really seem like they had their act totally together." And we just got a pretty professional looking proposal from this guy, Benjamin, a French national who was living in Phnom Penh. He was working in an NGO, a non-governmental organisation, with kids there, and he was a skater and he wanted to introduce a skate program. And we thought, he's actually got the capacity to do something. So let's seed this. And we seeded it with $5,000 and said, okay, he had this idea that he'd approach this telecommunications company and they would match the funding. So then all of a sudden there was 10 grand there. They built these ramps at the school and they built out a whole program from that original 5,000 that we pledged. And from my point of view, it was like I was sitting in Kabul. There's bombs going off all of the time. There's all of these things going. I was like, Skateistan is like so rad. Imagine if just one bomb comes and like wipes out the whole organization. We can't have all of our eggs in one basket. We've got to, like, being in Cambodia might be like, if it gets too gnarly in Afghanistan, then maybe Skateistan gets to live on. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the motivation behind backing something, trying it out to build it out in Cambodia. So that was around 2010, 2011. And that then slowly grew, and we gave Benjamin a lot of scope, and he did a brilliant job recruiting staff. We then had some staff from Afghanistan go over and try to build that out, Rhiannon and Brandon.
Did you pretty much mirror what you'd done in Kabul and Cambodia?
We tried as much as possible, and it had its own style, and we wanted to do the same thing where let's listen to what the kids want and have it. We had the same programs, but we adapted them slightly. So the difference in Cambodia was that there was lots of other opportunities for children. There were other NGOs doing interesting things with
Mm-hmm.
kids. It was a much easier environment. There was a lot more, I don't know, it's just not Afghanistan, And so because there were so many other NGOs, to add another NGO into the mix was another non-governmental organisation,
Mm-hmm.
another charity, was a crowded space, and we had to really prove that it was worthwhile being in that crowded space. But very, very fast we proved ourselves to be able. We were a catch-all, where there were these street kids that never could stick in any of the other programs. They would stick with the skateboarding because it was something we proved that we could work with the hardest to work with kids. So quickly these other NGOs that were doing great programs as well partnered up with us, and we became respected very, very fast in that space, which was a pretty big deal because some of these organisations had been going for 20 years or 30 years and had huge budgets and huge capacity behind them, but we had the magic formula for reaching the hardest to work with kids.
That's amazing.
So where in Kabul we couldn't actually find other partners that were reliable enough in a way. We did stuff together with the circus, and in our own little way, but they were doing their stuff and we were doing our stuff, and we shared information, and we didn't have partnerships in the same way. And in Kabul, there just was nothing else for kids. So Skateistan was just like a sponge, the kids had come there and they stuck to it. Whereas that was the problem that the other organisations in Cambodia had. They couldn't get the kids to stay with something. So that was 2011, and then 2013 we had, I guess we opened in Mazar.
What was the idea about moving to Mazar? Was it in case Kabul, the school got wiped out again? You wanted to have something else in Afghanistan, and that Mazar was a little bit safer at the time?
Mazar was about being ambitious to grow. So we had what we had in Kabul, but we just did it on a bigger scale and in a more ambitious way.
And did that go smoothly?
It was behind schedule by about a year, I think. The big difference in Mazar was that we hadn't built up the community base. With the Makarian fountain, there was that skateboarding community, and we built up the grassroots in a way. Whereas in Mazar, we just built this big shiny facility, and then people didn't really understand what it was. So Norzai, who was in Kabul, came up to, he was the...
Let's talk for a second about Norzai. How old was Norzai when you met him?
When I first met Norzai, he was probably around 11 years old, and he was in rags. He was working on the street shining shoes, and he was a quiet, smart kid, and he took to skateboarding really fast. When we had the first pros come over, Cairo Foster and Kenny Reid, Mason Farage and Louisa Menke, he really was engaged because I just, I wasn't a good enough skater, and all of a sudden he was just seeing things that he hadn't actually seen before, and it was, that really sparked something.
So Norzai is probably the best skater in Afghanistan, would you say? Yeah. And then he's a fast to learn. Okay, and then he also went through the program, right? Went through this education program at the school?
Yep. He started as a student, and he became a youth leader. And then from being a youth leader, he had a part-time job as a skateboard instructor, and then became a full-time job. And then he went to Mazar and actually introduced skateboarding to northern Afghanistan.
That is amazing.
Once he was in Mazar, he continued with his schooling, and we arranged it so he could keep on going to high school while he was doing his job. And then after that, he enrolled in law in university, and now he's actually graduated law. Wow. So we're talking that is amazing. To go from being, working on the streets in rags to what would it be 8 years later, he's graduating from law school. That is the success story, right? that. Yeah, I think it's really incredible, and especially from that. I mean, the class, he lives, his parents live literally in a mud hut on a mountain. In the early days in Kabul, we had this Employee of the Month competition. And if you got Employee of the Month, then your name would go in a hat. And at the end of the year, you would pull a name out of the hat, and you would win 2 tickets to Hajj, which is to go to Mecca. So for a Muslim, that is the one thing that you want to be able to do in your life, to one time go to Mecca. It's something very, very meaningful to anybody in Afghanistan. And he won Employee of the Month so many times that his name was in the hat more than anyone else, and he sent both of his parents to Hajj, and that was just mind-blowing.
That's so awesome. Things just seem like they're falling into place. I mean, the organization is so amazing for all the reasons that you described, all the findings that you had in Kabul. I mean, if that was, multiplied in Cambodia as well as Mazar, and when Chad and I visited, Skateistan in Afghanistan, we felt it. It was a life-changing trip for me because I saw how simple it was and how skateboarding was affecting these kids' lives in such an amazing way, and how excited they were, you know. And I don't know if it was the kids that have like either the best grades or that have the best conduct, but they get to be front in line and they get to go pick out their boards first when it's skate class, and they get to pick out the shoes, and they know the setups that roll and have really good bearings, and they know the shoes that don't stink or whatever, you know. And like the fact that they rush to the one board, like they're standing in line and I can see them like pointing to the board, like trying to line up what board they're going to go and grab because they know it rolls really well and all that. I'd never seen anything like that. You know, I'd never seen kids that excited to skate. And I mean, it was super clear to me, like I'd heard about, obviously, you know, we'd been supporting the program, we'd been sending you guys boards, but seeing it firsthand and seeing the looks on these kids' faces and the girls just being dressed like girls, you know, like dresses and the full nine, you know, in the native garb, it was like, it was amazing just to see how excited they were to skate and how good they were getting too. And then how good, you know, the teachers, the skateboard teachers, how good they had all gotten, you know, like, what was the girl's name? I filmed her like olling off the quarter pipe. Hanifa, yeah. And I just remembered being like, oh my gosh, this girl's olling off a 4 foot high or 5 foot high quarter pipe. Like that is an amazing, like, you know, feat to come from, you know, not having any skateboards at all in Afghanistan to, you know, I don't know, it was a big thing to see. And I just remembered being completely in awe of it. And likewise, you guys started receiving, you know, a ton of recognition. I started hearing about it and, you know, obviously being very happy for you guys, but you guys started receiving awards and talk a little bit about that. How was that to start being recognized at that, I don't know, what is it, NGO level or, you know, just, I don't know, what were some of the early awards that you guys received?
We got the Peace and Sport Award. It's based out of Monaco from the Prince of Monaco. We got NGO of the Year in 2009. We won a Beyond Sport Award for innovation through sport. I think it was UNICEF Award for education. We won the Trans World Eric Stricker Award. That was super exciting. We've been ranked in the top 100 NGOs in the world consistently over the last couple of years, and that's actually a list of the top 500, but we're in the top 100 and we're around number 60, and all of that is really great. But what's the best is that it's actually like my connection to skateboarding and the kids' connection to skateboarding, sort of like what you felt when you saw the joy in the kids running for the board or doing all of those things. The fact that they still want to do it, that's really the biggest. That's what gets me all of the awards. It just feels like they're jumping on the bandwagon somehow. You know, they want to use a Skateistan picture, and it seems like it's a good marketing tool for them. Or
yeah, everyone has.
I don't know. It's.
I understand what you're saying. Everyone has their agenda, but I remember being in Afghanistan with you, and we took some meetings. And I remember we took some meetings, and I don't really remember who it was with, but it was like someone either in the Olympic Committee or something. And I just remembered the guy being blown away. He's like, I cannot believe what you've accomplished in our country. He's like, no one has done this. No one has been able to do what you have done. And it you know, hearing a native Afghan basically look at you like, I can't believe what you've done here. Like, you've shown us all it's possible, that ethnicity doesn't matter, socioeconomic backgrounds don't matter. And I almost started crying in this one meeting, and I was just like, you know, I was so happy for you, and I was so happy that I was even playing like the smallest role in this project, and I was happy for humanity that this guy was acknowledging it. And I would have never been able to have that perspective of what it meant, you know? Like, anyone, any award, you know, you guys you've had interviews and magazines, and you've been featured in tons of publications. But to hear an Afghan man that's in the, I don't know, he's a politician or he's ranked in the country. Him just like expressing his sheer just amazement by how skateboarding and Skateistan had, broken down these boundaries. I felt it. I felt like that it was all worth it for you and for everyone involved. And I left that trip thinking, like, if I only did this one little good in my life, that I was able to we were able to at Zero and Fallen be able to support this project, even in the slightest way. And then seeing the kids wearing the shoes and stuff, like, it was very heartwarming. Like, I wished I had my whole family there. I wish my whole family would have been able to see, like my kids, I wish they'd have been able to see how appreciative these kids were just to be in the front of the line to ride a skateboard for 1 hour and to see, and I don't know.
I mean, I still tear up every time that I go to Skateistan sites. I'm going to go to Afghanistan from here, and last time I was there, we actually went out to a refugee camp near Mazar, and I had the elders. I was sitting down with the elders in a tent, and they're all telling me about how they really appreciated that their children were going to education, going to school for the first time, and how great Skateistan has been working. And at first, they didn't want to allow their children to go to Skateistan, but the Skateistan staff members in Mazar-i-Sharif, all Afghans, they decided to take the whole program and bring it to the refugee camp instead of insisting that the kids come to Skateistan. So then they built up that link with the community. The community went, okay, we can actually trust you guys. And then they so they worked out how to make it work. And I was in tears. This is the greatest thing ever. So when that validation comes back, it's great to have it from some sort of, rich guy that's like influential in Afghanistan, but to have it from these people that are the poorest of the poor, and then they haven't gone to school themselves, they haven't had a chance to have education, and then them realizing the potential for their children and being happy about it and thanking me. That's just, and that wasn't I didn't drive that. That came up by itself.
But what you created,
because we built the basis, and that's what I'm both incredibly proud of, but also in awe of.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in awe of Skateistan because I didn't have the grand vision or anything. It was like feeling our way in the dark the whole time. Yeah. Like one step after another. Oh, like that worked. Well, let's try something else. And
but you do want to keep the momentum going. At the board meeting, we talked about Jordan a little bit. There is the concept of starting another Skateistan skate school in Jordan. Do you want to speak about that at all, or is it kind of in the early phase?
Yeah, I'm going on a scoping trip now to Jordan. We really hope to get some backers. 1/3 of the population in Jordan are refugees. It's with us. Yeah, we've got an ambitious plan to build our biggest ever Skateistan skate school and have all members of there's refugees from all different countries that are in Jordan, and also then the ability to then mix with Jordanians is a very strong point, and that's something that we nailed in Afghanistan. And
yeah.
I think it's a powerful tool.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to kind of take a second to ask how important, I've you guys have done these campaigns, fundraising campaigns through social media. There's, at the board meeting we talked about, there's about 2 per year because you don't want to keep asking people for things. How important are those fundraising efforts compared to these big grants that you're getting from governments? Like,
It's the way that we would like to have Skateistan funded. I'd much rather be supported by, individuals that really care about what we're doing, rather than other donors that have their own agendas. We want to be able to keep on doing what we do and keep on providing exactly what we see is relevant and that works. And I think having that, having individuals that support us, that are passionate about what we do and that also love skateboarding perhaps, or want to get behind girls accessing education, that's that's the type of support that I dream of for the organisation. And right now that's about 40% of our overall income, and we'd like to build that out to around the 60% level.
Right.
So a lot of that is through our monthly donor program, which is Citizens of Skateistan. So Skateistan, the word means place of skate or land of skate. Istan means place of or land of. And citizens are then the people that belong to the land of skate. And all of our staff members, all of our students are citizens of Skateistan, and our monthly donors can join this family.
Okay, can you tell our listeners how they can join the Citizens of Skateistan?
Yeah, it's a $10 a month minimum donation, and with that you get a newsletter every month, and we want to build in more into the program as well.
Do you get a T-shirt?
You get a T-shirt if you donate at $40 a month. You get a hoodie if you donate at $80 a month.
Wow!
But those are one-offs.
You can also buy those too.
You can't buy those.
Oh,
you
okay.
have to, they're citizens only merchandise.
Okay. But there is merchandise. People can support Skateistan through buying merchandise, right?
You can also support through buying Skateistan merchandise, through buying co-branded merchandise.
Yeah, and you guys are doing a collaboration with Almost this year, right? Like soon?
Yes, yeah,
When does that come out?
very soon. Sky Brown is a fantastic supporter. She's 9 years old. She's amazing. She just came to our Cambodia opening, and she was connecting with all of the kids. We do a lot of programs with disabled children, and we've actually built a skate park at a deaf school in Phnom Penh. And she was connecting with all of the kids there, and they were just like blown away by it.
Yeah, because she's so good.
Almost is together with Sky Brown is supporting Skateistan. So look out for.
And then you also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, look out for that board.
And then you also consistently do stuff with Jim and Deluxe with Thunder and Spitfire, correct?
Yeah, Jim is absolutely amazing. He's been such a fantastic supporter. We've had two co-brandings with Spitfire, with Thunder trucks. Really, really cool stuff, and we're looking forward to doing more stuff into the future as well.
Awesome.
The skate industry has shown Skateistan a lot of love, and
and rightfully so. I mean, it's the most deserving.
We're very thankful.
All right.
To all of the awesome people out there that have got behind us, that have
and we did some collabs through the years. Stoked to even be a part of this story in any way, shape, or form. Thank you so much for sharing with us, and for all those of you that want to become a citizen of Skateistan, just go to Skateistan website?
Yep, it's skateistanollie, so skateistan.org.
All right.
And become a citizen.
All right. Well, thank you, Oliver. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.